All set with that. So hey, so this is the way it's going to work. And first of all, my name is Peter Drescher, Education Technology Coordinator. I'm going to introduce you to somebody else real quick who's going to lead most of this session today. But let me give you just a quick rundown. So the way I'm going to run this is I'll have you all muted. If you have a question or something, you can raise your hand or you can put something in the question thing, and I'll kind of be monitoring that as Mindy goes along with the presentation. And we'll stop and do questions as they come up. So we can be a little informal there. But use your question, that little raise your hand thing. That if you do that, I can unmute you and you can ask a question or whatever. So we'll just go that direction. Just a little preface here. So you've tuned in today. We're doing this is a little training, initial training on OER Commons, which is something we've created a partnership with at the state of Vermont. And OER Commons is open education resources. It's the Commons that was started, and Mindy's going to tell you a little bit about how it began. But we're using this as kind of our sharing place and creation place for all things open education resources. Mindy will give you a little overview of what that actually means, and we'll talk a little bit at the end. Mindy has to be kind of done at a hard stop at 4 o'clock, so we're going to let her go, and then we'll continue to have a little conversation about OER in Vermont and how we're trying to roll this out and kind of get some awareness going. So I'm really glad you're all here. Part of the reason, of course, for having you here is to kind of get some awareness going with you folks so that you can then spread the word to your constituents in your schools and your supervisory unions, et cetera. So I'm glad we have a lot of library media specialists here. And I'm seeing a pretty good mix of folks from the tech world and from the library media area. So anyway, so I'm going to actually right now it looks like Ellen, you have a question. I'm going to unmute you, Ellen Thompson, if you have a question. Okay, all right. She put her hand down. Okay. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm recording this, so if there's other people that you know that have not, aren't here today or aren't going to be able to come today, go ahead and put them in there. So that'd be great. Alert them that I have made the recording and I'll get it out to them if they send me an email. So we're all good there. All right. So without further ado here, so I want to introduce my colleague here. Mindy Boland is from OER Commons, and she is coming to us from the West Coast today. And she's going to give us kind of an overview of using the site, kind of, the resources that are here, how it kind of works. We'll talk a little bit about Vermont Open, and she'll show about this group that we've started with Vermont Open, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So I'm going to stop talking and let Mindy chime in here. So go ahead, Mindy.
Thank you, Peter. Hello, everyone. I'm Mindy Boland. I am the Senior Product Manager for OER Commons and OER Services at ISKME. And I'm excited to show you guys OER Commons today, give you a little bit of insight into how you can use the site to find and curate and create OER. Let me get my correct screen going here. And tell me if you can see OER Commons right now.
There you go. Yeah. Switch.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I've got two monitors, so sometimes it gets a little funky. Anyway, so I'm excited to tell you guys about how you can use OER Commons to further your understanding and use of OER. I'm going to start with a little overview about ISKME, who we are, how OER Commons came to be. Then I want to talk a little bit about what is open and what is OER. Then we'll dive into the site and we'll look a little bit more deeply at how you can search and discover resources on OER Commons, some ways that you might want to filter search results, things like that. And if there's time, we might look briefly at the authoring tools that are available on OER Commons. But I think with this group, we'll probably want to focus more on how to do search and discovery of OER, and then also walk through the groups on OER Commons. So ISKME stands for the Institute for the Study of Knowledge Management in Education. And we were formed in 2002 by Lisa Petrides, our CEO, who was a professor at the Teacher College at Columbia University. And we really started as a research institute, focusing on doing research around how educators are managing content and curriculum and knowledge, essentially, and taking that research and then applying it to teaching practice. And then in 2007, through a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, we launched OER Commons. And what you're seeing today is the OER Commons of today. It looked very different 10 years ago in 2007. But essentially what it is today is a digital public library of open education resources and a collaboration and authoring platform. So what that means for OER Commons is that we, as a public library, we are here for the public good. We're a nonprofit, grant-funded, and somewhat sustainable services. You're seeing both of my screens, Greg? Okay, let me fix this.
Yeah, I'm getting two screens too right now.
Okay, whoops. How's that?
Nope.
Now I got nothing?
No, it's still the same. There we go. There we go. Now you're that's good. Now it's the full OER Commons piece here.
Okay, yep. Great. Sorry about that. GoToMeeting does not like two screens. Where was I? Okay, so we both index open education resources that are available on the web. So things like Khan Academy videos, illustrative mathematics, Engage New York, all of those resources can be found on OER Commons. Like a library would, we create records of them, we add our metadata to them so that they are findable, and then we index them. In addition to that, we also have authoring tools so that folks can come to OER Commons and create new OER that can then be shared out and published within the community of open education practitioners. So we'll go into that a little bit in more detail later on. I don't know exactly where all of you are on your journey in open education, so I'll show you briefly a video kind of about open. This is the OER Commons Help Center, which is available on every page of OER Commons. We have a number of wonderful help articles here that can guide you as you try and use the site. If you ever have a question, you can type it into this little widget in the corner and it'll take you to the Help Center. There's also a support email that you can write to that will respond to you right away. So no, there's lots of supports within the system for available to you to use.
Look, I need that book, and this one too, for an assignment. No, I can't. That's the rule. Look, I need that book. Look, I need. No, I can't. I'm gonna sign that book. That's the rule. Look, I need that book.
Open education.
Open education. Open education.
Open education is
The future of education.
It's user-created content that's happening outside of traditional channels.
It offers the opportunity for everybody to create and to collaborate.
Most of the majority are people who do want to learn, but they can't because they don't have the necessity.
I think the essence of education is that people want to continue to learn.
This is education that's delivered to students and individuals as they need.
In my work, what's important is being able to meet students where they are.
Open has changed copyright because I can now grab a course, change it, make it my own because I know what my students need.
Knowledge deserves to be free.
Ideas and activities and resources that connect where they are and where I need to take them. Open education is changing the rules.
It's only fair.
Lots of people whose voices haven't been out there in society because they aren't able to write a book, they aren't able to get published by a publisher, begin to have a voice. You're not just one teacher in a four-walled classroom. You're one person in a network of ideas and creativity.
They can take learning out of the classroom, out of the four walls, and be in the world.
And then start teaching kids in a lot more different ways, like say maybe through music or art.
Open education is the new definition of fair.
As soon as employers start recognizing certificates earned through essentially open online resources, as other schools start recognizing the work that students have done in open education resources.
It's a game changer.
OER stands to really break down those barriers and really disrupt how people in our country and around the world will be learning.
It's about equity.
It's accessible to people in every country, places where people couldn't even afford the price of a pencil.
A lot of people think that open education is about more access to stuff.
And it is about more access to stuff, but more importantly, it's about more access to people, more access to tools, and more access to new ways to create education and to do education and to learn. And that's why it's important.
Open education.
It's the new game.
It lets us create.
I'm a game changer.
I'm a game changer.
We're all game changers now.
Okay, so that gives you kind of a fun introduction to open education. Some other tools that you would find here on the Help Center include an article about conditions of use. And if you've heard anything about open education, you've probably heard a little bit about Creative Commons licenses. Creative Commons licenses allow users who add these licenses to resources that they create to share materials freely, to distribute them, to remix them based on the different license that they select. So they kind of go from very open, which would be CC BY, Creative Commons with attribution. So you're going to say who you got your resource from, but you can use it. And then they get increasingly closed in things like no derivatives or non-commercial. When we have folks add licenses to resources that they create on OER Commons, we ask them some like 3 simple questions so they don't have to know all the different licensing options. But you can see these licenses on every single resource. We should note that while we encourage folks to openly license, we also do index some materials that may have custom licenses that are focused for educational use only. For example, Smithsonian and PBS Learning both use licenses like that. So again, the Help Center is always available and always open, so you can come here and search and learn more about sort of the workings of OER Commons and how things like licensing might be applied. Now I'm going to go back to the site. So you can see here, I am logged in. This is me up in the corner, but if I was not logged in, I would be able to come to OER Commons and search and browse and look around to my heart's content. You don't have to be a registered user until you want to start saving materials, contributing to groups, creating groups, or creating new resources. So let's go and look a little bit about searching, because I know that when folks come to OER Commons, they're usually coming for a resource that they need just in time. And so that's why we put this search bar right here front and center for folks to get in there and start looking. You can type in a keyword here. If you wanted to, you can also filter right here at the beginning of your search. You can filter by subject, by education level, and you can also filter by standard. Now this wouldn't take you all the way down to like a specific alignment, but it does start limiting it to resources that have been aligned to whichever one of these you were to select. I'm just going to leave it at my keyword geometry and click search. So these are my search results. You can see I have found 4,546 resources, which is kind of a lot. So I'm probably not really gonna, this is too many. Like I need to refine my search more. So here on the left, I have a number of ways that I can do that. So you can see here it says refine your search, and these are the different filters that you can use. So first, let's talk about how you might refine your search if you were working with educational standards. You could open here and select the standards that you're wanting to look through. So I'm going to go with Next Generation Science Standards. Then you can select your grade, and you can see on the right that the research results just diminished tremendously. I can select my domain, that topic, and engineering design. So now, looking at my search returns, I've got 6 results. If I wanted to remove any of these filters, I could just click the little X there. You can see I've got a lot of teach engineering results, which is probably not that surprising. And you can also see here in the search results that you can get kind of a preview of the metadata that's associated with each of these. Let's build an aqueduct. So every resource that you access on OER Commons has a landing page like this, where you can kind of see an overview of the record. So you can see here on the left that this resource has been aligned to 2 educational standards. One is Common Core State Standards for Math, and one is Next Gen Science Standards. You can see all of the tags that have been associated with this resource. And if this has something on here that you would like to add to it, you can add a tag to it as well. So I know that some folks, I think that Vermont as well, use unique tags for their states so that folks can find resources that have kind of been selected and highlighted at this, for a group or hub.
We're using VT Open.
There you go, VT Open. I think that's also listed on your group landing page.
Yeah.
So here you can see that you can add ratings to this resource, but you might not be ready to do that because you haven't actually looked at it yet. So what if we were to go look at it? So as you can see here, this is a resource that was indexed on OER Commons, but is not hosted by OER Commons. So this is a resource that was created outside of our site, but that we have added a record about. Across the top, you can see that it opens in an iframe. So unless there is some limitation created by the sort of the target website, we will open all resources in this iframe. Or if they're created in our authoring tools, they would not open in an iframe. And the reason we do that is so that while you are looking and reviewing this resource, you can rate it with stars. You can evaluate it using the Achieve rubric, which allows you to go through a series of questions, as any good rubric would. You can talk about how its alignment is to the standards that you've seen it aligned to. You can rate the quality of explanation of the subject matter, utility of materials designed to support teaching, quality of assessments. And you can skip these too, but the more that people take the time to fill out these evaluation rubrics, the higher value the resources become, because then someone else can come and take a look and assess the quality of it based on that kind of feedback. Some other things that you can do here from the top of the screen, you could share this resource on social media. Again, you can add tags. You can just add a comment if you wanted to do that. You can also share to Google Classroom. So if you click this button, it will ask you to log in to your Google Apps for Education account. And then from there, you would select your course, you would create an assignment. And lastly, you can save this resource. So when you click save, you get kind of 2 sections. On this top section is My Items. And this is all of my personal stuff that I'm saving. So these are all the folders that I have in my profile where I'm saving resources. Down here lower are the groups I'm a member of, and I can save this resource to my groups. So for you all, this would mean saving a resource to the VT Open group, most likely. Now let's go back. Now, another way you might want to filter your search, let's do another search here. We'll stick with geometry for now. You might want to filter your search based on material type. So first, let me just walk through some of the other areas here that you can filter on.
Here,
you can filter
real quick, Mindy, we got a question.
Okay.
Frank Barnes here is asking, there's a $7 price tag on this one. I think he's referring to that past resource there. Is there a way to filter out resources that have a cost?
I believe the $7 on that resource was actually for additional materials, or it was like to get a protractor and things like that. So okay. One of these submission guidelines for OER Commons is that resources are free and openly licensed and are not behind firewalls.
Okay.
So none of them require any login or anything like that. In some cases, you might find sites where you can like upgrade to something that has a cost, but you don't have to, and there's still valuable resources within there.
Okay. Frank says thanks.
Sure. So here on the left are the subject areas, and if I wanted to filter my search results by subject area, I may want to stick with math, but I may want to get more specific. So Each of these high-level subject areas has a second order vocabulary like these. So we kind of talk about them as subjects and then topics. So here I could say, no, I really, really want it to be specifically about geometry. I can also filter on education level. So if I wanted to make sure that I was limiting it to middle school geometry and not getting into some sort of college level geometry, I don't know if that's a thing, I could do that here. But one really valuable filter option, I think, is this material type menu, because OER can be anything. It can be an animation. It can be a full course. It could be a collection of PowerPoints. There's so many different flavors of what you can find that's OER. If you know what you're looking for, like maybe you want something to kick off a class, so you really want something kind of short, or maybe you want an entire unit that'll cover a topic in detail. You can use these filters here on the left to do that. And I'll show you a little bit later on the advanced search page. We do have some definitions associated with these so you can understand what we at OER Commons mean when we use these terms. I'm going to link to unit of study here because it gives me an opportunity to show you this math resource. And in showing you this math resource, I'm doing a couple of things because we had a grant a couple of years ago to bring in some complete courses. They were math grades 7 and 8 and ELA grades 11 and 12. And so out of that work, we developed what we call the course builder. And it's a way to have sort of a hierarchical collection of resources. So I've got the course, math grade 7, the unit, zooming in on figures. And then within that, I have all of these lessons. So you can see here there's also a resource library. So maybe there's a PDF of exercises. I can see the education standards. There's a lot because there's quite a lot of lessons in this particular unit. But let's go into house plans. So on the right, you can see some of the metadata associated with this resource. Again, you can view the standard. Now you can see the standards specifically about this lesson. And if there's any associated resources, which there are, you can see those here. But scrolling down the page, you can see we have these lessons have instructor and student-facing content. So everything that you see here at the top is really meant for other educators who are going to use this lesson. And then it's organized into tasks, which provide a sequenced experience of tasks the students will do. And each of those tasks has a teacher-facing section, and then the end side that the students will see, which is here. And you can see it goes down. Lots of information for the teachers in this particular resource, and then the student-facing. So if we go back up to the top, you can also see the student view of these resources, where it takes all that teacher-facing material and takes it away, and the student can really focus on what they're meant to be doing. And you can also, I think I must have remixed this one yesterday, but with resources that are created in the OER Commons authoring tools like these, you can also remix them. So let me show you another one here, and I can click remix. I can either keep this resource within the unit of the full course, or I can create a standalone lesson. So maybe I only want to learn to teach about this particular smaller unit of study. And here I can now remix it. So I can change the text. I've got a nice, easy WYSIWYG editor to use. I can also reorder the tasks with these up and down arrows, or I could edit the task, which allows you to add attachments, change the text, change the examples, whatever you want to do to make this more applicable to your students. So that is just a sort of a brief look at some of the authoring tools that we have on OER Commons. I'm not going to go through the whole thing here to publish it. I didn't make any changes. So let me go back to the home page here. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, Mindy, let me just chime in. So folks, a few people have joined since Mindy started. We're listening to Mindy Boland. She's from ISKME, which is the organization that has oversees or has created OER Commons, and she's giving a rundown there. I do see a question. And I was going to mention too, again, as we're doing this, you can put questions in the question panel, but you can also, I can unmute you and you can ask your question. Mike Rob Greco, you know what? I'm going to unmute you and let you ask that question because it's a lengthy one here. Here we go. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, I was just wondering about how to find or produce, how you're getting high quality resources, and whether the only thing I can see about what people think these are crowdsourced ratings, or if they're staff or expert recommendations. And then sort of with that, like, are there reviewer badges? Are reviews and reviewers rated? Are there incentives for doing reviews or even for posting and creating resources, that kind of stuff?
That's great. Good question. Yeah.
So let's go back to the landing page of a resource here and take a look. What I can tell you is a lot of what we have on OER Commons is indeed crowdsourced as far as that kind of paradata that describes the quality of the resources. That said, there are some different ways that you can sort of identify resources that have been vetted by others that you may hold in high regard. I don't know, but you can see. Let's see. Actually, let me just go here first. So first of all, yes, I think the evaluation rubric really does kind of require a certain level of in-depth understanding of what you're reviewing to answer the questions and really look at it. We don't have a specific like staff or expert that's doing this. We do have metadata librarians. So when resources are submitted, they review the resource, but they're looking primarily for open licensing and educational value. But I don't have, for example, an expert on teaching math in 8th grade going through all of those resources and evaluating them. It would be really cool if we did. That said, you can look at some of the other work that folks have done, for example, on the OER Commons hubs, and you can see the resources that they have selected. And in some cases, you may even see that they have endorsed them. And so some resources you'll find on OER Commons, actually, let me just go back over here. You may find some resources on OER Commons that have endorsements in the top right corner, and that means that either a OER Commons group or hub have endorsed a resource that they found to be high value. Lastly, you asked about badges, and we do have badges. Let me see if I have any badges. I think I have like one. But if you go to your landing page, you can go to other, if you go in your group, you can go see your colleagues' landing pages as well. And then I can look at my statistics and I can see everything I've done and I can see my badges. So there are badges related to evaluating resources, to rating resources, to creating resources. So that's a little bit about badges, and then they can be added to Mozilla Backpack if that's something that you guys use.
Let me just add on to that a little bit, Mindy. So Rob is asking if we're going to try to do some of that in Vermont, and yes, that's one of the plans moving forward. Of course, we're at the very beginning stages of this. I'm trying to build this kind of ambassador group, whatnot, to share this resource. But yeah, we have the content folks here at the agency did a webinar yesterday with Mindy and kind of got some boots on the ground on that, understanding how it works. A lot of them are very excited about using this resource and thinking about just that thing, being able to go in and looking for the various content areas that they oversee and looking at some of the resources that we put up. I think Mindy's going to spend a little time on groups in a minute, and she'll show you our Vermont Open group. And I want to encourage everyone on the webinar to join our group, and that's how we're going to kind of work to kind of keep the Vermont Open place be a place that we can kind of vet resources ourselves within the state as well. So. Mindy, actually, another couple of questions have come up too here. Brian Cranes asked, I've self-created a lot of content in my Google Drive. Is OER Commons integrated with Google Drive? I think that's a resounding yes, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I think you'll show something about that in a minute.
I will show something about that. I will indeed.
Okay. And then Deborah here, Deborah Eller Hansen, have they created MARC records for each of the resources that we can download into our online library catalogs? Question there.
We do not have MARC records to accompany these resources, but we do have an API if you wanted to, index records from OER Commons onto a library database. So we've done some work with some library services organizations like Circe Dynix to allow access to OER Commons resources through their search. But at this time, we have not done any work with MARC records.
That's great. I think you and I have talked about the API piece, and we may try to do that at some point to maybe get tech coordinators involved in the API piece there. So that'd be great.
Okay.
I'll let you continue on here.
All right. Before I go over to groups, I just want to take one close look here at the advanced search page. This is really a way to get a great glimpse at how we're describing resources on OER Commons. As always, you can search by keyword. But if you scroll down here, you can also see that we have all of these different educational standards that you can filter by resource evaluation criteria. You can also just filter by resources that have been evaluated with a rubric. You can look at educational use. Again, here's the material types, and we've actually grouped them here to make it a little easier to sort of assess what's what. And then we also have a help article in our support center that provides the definitions of what those are. So if I just click material types here, you can see all of the different material types and how we're defining them on OER Commons. Let me go back over here. Some other ways that you can filter and search are member activities. So if you want to only find items that have been commented upon or rated, you can also content source is a great way if you want to find resources that have been created in the OER Commons open author authoring platform. You could look at courseware or open author resources. Content provider resources are those resources that we're indexing but are externally hosted. You can also look at the different grade levels. Media format, if you know that you really want a video, you can filter by that. We have some accessibility fields here. And then down here at the bottom are the conditions of use. So this is where you can start looking at all of those different Creative Commons licenses and filtering if you know that you have specific requirements around what you're looking for. But you can rest assured that resources that you find on OER Commons are available to use for free. Okay, so now that we've done all of the searching options, let's think about different ways that you can discover OER and find resources that maybe have been validated and vetted by others. Maybe they're your colleagues, maybe they're not. We'll just take a look at a few options here. So I'm going to go over to groups because I think that one of the aspects of open education that's really important is collaboration and sharing and working together. And so OER Commons offers a lot of different sort of collaborative tools, and groups is one of those. And we make groups something that anybody can see a group. You may not be able to join it, but you can see it and you can see the work that's been done there. So you can see the resources that have been curated, for example. Once you join a group, you'll see your groups that you're a member of here. And then we've got some featured groups over here on the right. I'm going to go to see all groups. So I know Vermont has a group. If you wanted to create your own group, you can do that with this button here. And that is available, again, to any registered user. You can filter the groups that you're going to see with these different drop-down menus. And you can search if you know the name of the group you're looking for, which I think I might. So here is the Vermont group, VT Open. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so I am not a member of this group, which is why it says request to join, and I think that is what you all are invited to do. You can just go to this URL up here, or you can navigate to the group the same way that I did. Here in the opening description, you can see Peter's included the tags that they're using. So if you find resources on OER Commons that you want to, that you've added to the group, you want to tag them with these different tags so they'll be easier to find. We can see the number of members, the number of resources. And here on the left, you can see the work done towards creating folder taxonomies on that are really going to meet the needs of you all more specifically than you would with sort of the generic OER Commons descriptions. If you look at all shared resources, that's here. Some other things that you'll find on a group like this, we do have a discussion boards, and there's you can have threaded discussions. So you can see here, this is pretty active discussion actually, resources meeting submission criteria, some questions about folders. Something we're going to be adding to groups very soon is a way to direct message folks in your group. So if you wanted to have a conversation here with maybe like a subset of the group, you could do that. You would click to start a new discussion, and then you would be able to add the group members that you want to include. Some other things currently here, if you're starting a new discussion, you can determine whether this discussion is only visible to members of the group or if it's visible to anyone on OER Commons. And also you can see here we've got the same WYSIWYG editor that you saw on the authoring tools. So you can actually, embed tables and videos and images and even math if you have really specific kind of curriculum things you want to talk about in the discussion board. You can see all of the members of your group here. And again, so as I mentioned, I could go into my own account. I'm not going to embarrass anybody here, but if you click on a user, you can go and you can see their analytics. Like you saw how I had some badges, kind of what I've done on OER Commons. You can do that as well by clicking on these members. And just as another sort of glimpse into the future of OER Commons, we are sort of heading down a path, I think, where we really want to have more sort of a social features here because open education is so much about social. So you'll find more things like that over time as we allow users to follow one another or to follow resources and collections. Here is the information tag, which gives you an overview about this group. And these are really those same drop-down menus you saw on the All Groups page. So there are ways to find it. So when you create a group, you want to make it easy to find. And recent activity is the timeline of activity in the group. So you can see here that Sarah's been very busy, which is awesome. and here's some more work down here. So you can see what's been going on in your group as well. The only times I believe you'll get notifications from your group is when there's a discussion happening. That said, we are talking about adding new notifications that you would see a number here by the bell for personal notifications. So you might start seeing it when someone adds a resource to your group, for example. Okay, I'm going to go back to shared resources. And yesterday I had found this wonderful template that Emily created. So let's take a look at that. And while we're at it, we'll look at the resource builder in our authoring tool. So this was created by Emily Titterton. She's in Vermont. And she created it as a template for 7th grade visual art. And a nice description here of how to use it. And really what makes this a template is that users can come and they can change it. So you can make any kind of resource here. It doesn't have to be called the template. You can make, a very specific activity if you want to. And if someone were to come and remix it, you would be notified as the author. And someone else coming to see it can also open this version history to see how many remixes or what else has been going on with the resource. Now, if I wanted to adapt this for my visual arts class, I can click Remix this resource. And now I can go in and I can edit this. I could also associate it with other pieces of OER that I might have saved. So if I click to add from my items, I could say, wow, this really connects well with designing professional learning opportunities. And I can click that and I can add that item. So now when someone opens this resource, they'll see that I've associated it with another one. You can also work with colleagues. So you can have co-authors on your resource. So if you want to find someone and work together on something, you can search for them as long as they have an account in OER Commons. I'll add my colleague, Michelle. She's now a co-author. And now she can come in here. We can't work on it at the same time, but we can work on this together asynchronously and improve it. Now, lastly is import from Google Docs. And this isn't really a great example for how you would use import from Google Docs, but we're going to do it anyway because we're here. So if this was a new resource I was creating, I would be on this very same screen. And if I had been working in Google Docs and I have a resource that I have been working on in Google Docs and it's perfect and I'm ready to publish it on OER Commons, I can click Import from Google Docs. It'll link to my account, and then I can just select a resource, and it's going to overwrite all of this and create a new piece of OER on OER Commons. So now I've got a new resource based on my Google Doc. It's got pictures and tables. It's lots of stuff happening there. And now I want to describe it so that someone else can come and find it. So this carried over all the metadata from Emily's resource. So let's imagine that I'm starting from scratch here, and I'm going to type in an abstract. I can assign my general subjects. I could say who it's for, what kind of thing it is, all of the same metadata that you saw on the advanced search screen. And I can also align it to standards. Once I've done all that, I go to submit. And as I mentioned before, I've got 3 easy questions that I need to answer, and then my license will be attributed. And then I can just click publish, and it will be published. Now, as a group member, since you guys are going to be contributing to the VT Open group, once you have joined, you will actually see a different link here, and it'll give you a way to submit resources to the group without having to go back and save it after you've created it. So I'm going to go to a group where I'm a member. And you can see here it says contribute to this group. So now I can use the resource builder, which is what Emily used. I can use the lesson builder, which is what we saw for that math resource. The lesson builder and the module builder are very similar. Module builder is just geared towards higher ed. I can also submit, just click submit. What is that, you ask? Well, it's a URL. So if you have found a resource on the web that is openly licensed and not on OER Commons, you can add it. So all you would do, let me just take this URL here because it's convenient. I can put it in there, click continue. Now I've got to describe the resource, same as you did with the authoring, where you would put all of the metadata associated with it. So I'll have to have a description. If I know who the authors are, I would put them here. I can select the Creative Commons license. Now we know that sometimes folks don't know where to look for these. So you know, we encourage you to try, but if you just can't find it, you can click I don't see any of these, and our metadata librarians will go and they'll find it for you. You can also have some, so the items with asterisks are the ones that need to be filled out. So you will need to say what subject it is or what kind of thing it is. But then some of these are optional, so don't be overwhelmed. And then you would click continue, and that would send this resource off to, I think you can preview it actually once you click continue, but that will send this resource off to our metadata librarians who will review it for the licensing. So now I was going to take us to a couple other groups just to see other ways to discover content that's been validated by folks. So now I think I'm going to filter on, what am I going to filter on? I'm going to filter on middle school. And apparently when I was planning this, I was like obsessed with math for some reason. So we'll look at math again. Oops. And now I can see, you can see my search up there. Now I've got a limited number of groups that have all self-identified as math middle school groups. So I'm going to go to the Hawaii Math Common Core group. So ISKME did a lot of professional development in Hawaii, and they were actually kind of the genesis of groups on OER Commons. What they did was they created these pretty comprehensive folder taxonomy here on the left, and then they did a lot of work curating resources to that taxonomy. This one specifically resources that are aligned to Common Core for math. So let's go back into geometry here. And now I can just open this resource, and again, I'll have all those same opportunities to add value to it by aligning it or evaluating it or adding comments. This one has actually been evaluated using a rubric, and it has a nice comment here. So I'll show you one more group, and then we can move on from groups. So now I want to look at upper primary. And let's take a look at the Arkansas spell group. And the reason I'm showing you all of these is because I really think that it's valuable to go in and look at the groups and look at what other people are curating, because if other people have taken the time to look at these, you should benefit from their work. That's part of open practice. And maybe there's things here that will meet the needs for you and for your learners. So what they did in Arkansas was they created this type of folder structure where they've got the grade ELA and the grade math. And I think we were going to look at grade 4 ELA. And now I can see everything in this folder. So you can see there's some open author resources that were created within our authoring tools and other resources that have been indexed from external sites. And I think that I've already shown you what I was going to show you here, but let's take another look at an open author resource for fun. This one has been aligned to 4 standards. It's been evaluated with the Equip rubric. And if you open it up, they use the unit feature on Open Author. And here is this is a template intended to plan for supporting teaching for ELLs. And that's great that I found that, because I have some folks using OER Commons who are looking for things like that. So I'm going to make a note of it. Okay, so that's discovering work through things that other groups have done. Do you guys have any questions about that? Unless someone is speaking and you, oh, there you are.
Oh, yeah. Just let me know if you've got I don't see any raised hands here. If you raise your hand, I can unmute you and you can just talk. So if anybody's got a question, go for it. Just put the raised hand thing in there.
Okay.
I think it looks like we're good for now.
All right, great.
So
a couple other ways.
I just want to make a call out too. A lot of people from this group have been sending requests to be part of Vermont Open, so that's great.
Awesome, fantastic.
Everybody on the call will do that. That'd be awesome. So yeah, we're psyched about that.
Wonderful, that's great. So another way to leverage other people's work, I guess you could say, is to look at hubs. Hubs on OER Commons are it's a paid service that we offer, but it's also something that we've used internally to highlight topics that we found our users to be interested in. So if you look at the Network Hubs page here, you'll see there's a wide variety of hubs. AEA Online Learning is a hub created in the state of Iowa to support professional development around the use of OER. So this might be a great place to start looking and seeing what other folks are using. They have some curated collections of resources here that are, you can see all the topics. Some of them are provider sets. Some of them are specific to like Common Core aligned resources. Check that out. You can also see that they have AEA community content, which is all Iowa specific content. I mean, it probably is pretty high value content. I'm not sure if it's like got Iowa specific examples or what have you. Probably not. So there's probably really good things in here that you could use too. And so if you find something from a site like this, from a collection like this, you can do what you can with any other resource on OER Commons, and you can save it to your group or to your own items. So some other hubs that you might want to check out. We have a few that are sort of international NGOs, which would be the OAS, which is the Organization of American States, Alexo, which is the Arab League, sort of UNESCO of the Arab League, and also UNESCO, which is UNESCO of UNESCO. And we also did a lot of work with Washington and Wisconsin, and they have some other statewide hubs. So those are great places to go and find resources that you might want to use. Washington in particular has done a lot of work, really even at a policy level, and so that folks who are grant funded from the state of Washington have to openly license the resources that they create. But you can see also they've used the groups feature here to include a reviewed OER library, so you can find resources that have been reviewed by their Department of Public Instruction, content that they've developed, and then they've also got some different groups for their different educational units. So again, another example of a resource for finding resources, if you will. Now, the last thing I want to show you here is this Discover menu, and these are some more ways to just find stuff. So if you click on resources, what you'll get is a browse screen where you can just sort of start poking around. Once you've selected a subject area or a grade level or a material type, it's going to take you to a page that looks a lot like the ones we've already looked at, where you can then filter further using these filters on the left. You can also look at collections, and these are, a lot of these collections are ones that you would find on those hubs. But we've tried to highlight some of our favorites here, so you can see those. And lastly is the providers. So as I mentioned, OER Commons includes a lot of materials that are indexed from external providers, and you can find them all here. So if you know that you really, really love resources created by a specific organization, for example, maybe you love CK12 Flexbooks, for example, you can go and you can look at all of their Flexbooks. There's a lot. So this is just, another way. If you already have a high value quality provider that you know of, you can look that way as well and find resources created by them. So they are all listed here. It's a really long list, but there you have it. And I think I just hit the bottom of my page. So are there any questions?
Mindy, maybe say a little bit about what we talked about yesterday with the content folks. The question about, it sounds like it's a future plan, but bringing in other content standards or other standard sets.
Yes, thank you. So basically we can bring in a number of different kinds of educational standards. You can see some examples of them here, like Next Gen Science Standards, AASL 21st Century Learner Standards, the UNESCO Competency Framework. Typically how it works is that when we work with states to develop a hub, for example, they ask us to bring in their state-specific standards, and that is when we do it. We spoke a little bit yesterday about national level standards that aren't in here that would really add value. And I know there are many of them, and we have had requests to bring those in. We're in the process of updating the way that we bring in standards, because right now it's a little bit inefficient, I guess we'll say. So we're working on building out some tools for bringing in standards, and as long as we can get them in CASE, JSON, or ASN, we will be able to bring them in much more efficiently. And then as we get requests for things, we could, and I think the Common Core Social Studies ones are pretty high on the list, we can start bringing in additional standards.
That's great. Thanks for bringing that up. Folks, is anybody have questions at this point for Mindy? Just raise your hand in the little raise hand tool there, and I'll unmute you. It's a quiet group today.
Yeah. Well, let's just, I'll bring up the VT open group one more time so that everyone can see it and remember what it looks like.
Be great.
I should also note, I don't think I mentioned, if any of you guys are using a learning management system, I don't know if folks in Vermont are doing that or if they're using Google Apps. We talked about Google Apps for Education, but we can also link this group to an LTI consumer. So if you're using Moodle or Canvas or Schoology or something like that, you would be able to access all of the resources in this group as well as all of the resources in your personal My Items through an LTI window and add them to your LMS.
Yeah, I think people would be interested in that. Maybe I get with you and we figure out a way to put some kind of how-to on VT Open or something around that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think I can even, we have a resource like that. So
before you go, actually, one thing if you could do before you go, can you just show very quickly the just the professional development resources that, you know, the videos and such that people can kind of go back to talk about curating and things like that? I think for this group especially, it'd be great for them to see that there are, you know, so, that they could share those things with their folks on the local level.
Of course. So Peter got a sneak preview of this hub that ISKME created around open education practice and professional learning. And we created this because we wanted to provide a place where not only could people who are practitioners of open education share their stories, we also wanted it to make it kind of easier to make that shift. So we've created some kind of meta collections of OER about OER here, finding and curating OER, building OER curriculum, librarians and open education, open licensing, you know, you guys can read. So you know, there's all these collections of resources here. This is a group we're inviting people to join where they can share their stories and any resources they may have. We've got some videos of folks who have been working in open education. And then down here we have our virtual academy, and these are really kind of similar to what we've done today, but they're longer form sort of online courses around discovery and curation or quality evaluation, authoring and remixing, etc. So if you go into these groups, you can see those resources specific to those topics. We've used them for sort of blended learning training sessions. So you can see here, Introduction to OER, Discovery, Curation. And these are available to anyone. Just go to this hub, Open Educational Practice and Professional Learning, and you can start, you know, exploring these. You can save them to your own items. Maybe you want to make a folder in the VT Open group and just start getting in there and digging in. At the very bottom here, we also have some tools and templates. We have an Open Education Practice rubric, which is kind of a cool way to go through and see where you are on the spectrum and move your way through, you know, the different levels of open education practice. We've got some webinars here. These are just sort of like what we're doing today, but they were done more generically, and we put them all on their very own page. So here's some OER training webinars. They're all about an hour long, about curation, authoring, STEM literacy, and the rubric we just talked about, and remixing. So we'll continue to add to those as we do more. So you can get to those by clicking this link here. And there you have it. Anything else?
That's great, thanks. There was another question here. We've got a couple more actually. Resources for flexible pathways, personalized learning. Ellen Thompson asking that question. I think there's, I mean, various states are doing things around this. So do you, Mindy, have a sense of some states that may have some things that are in there already?
Not specifically, no. It actually brings up something that I think would be really useful for us to add to our schema, is sort of adding another layer of description around resource types, where, you know, whether something has flexible pathways or is project-based learning, things like that, but we don't currently have a way to identify those easily.
Yeah, that could be something too, Ellen, that I think we're thinking about for Vermont educators, Vermont Open. I mean, a nice way to kind of share some of those resources that folks are creating locally. I'm hoping that it kind of becomes part of that. This, you know, this effort here becomes part of that as well. So, actually, and Anna says, thanks, this is amazing. So yeah, some good kudos there. It's great.
Fantastic.
So I think I think you need to jet off, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. We may. I'm gonna stay with the group for a few minutes here and talk about a next step for another. You had mentioned doing maybe a couple of these, so maybe we could do one kind of specific to authoring next time. That might be something useful for this group in particular.
That would be great. Uh-huh.
All right.
Great. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. So, folks, if you want to stay on the webinar here, I'll switch back to my screen here. I was pleased that folks were joining the group here. Why don't I just do this? I'm going to stop the recording. Yeah, actually, maybe you won't. I'm going to go ahead and just unmute folks. There's only, I think there's about 17 of us here. If you'd like to speak, you can. Anyone have any other questions? I'll talk for a minute too about just, kind of the efforts we're doing here.
Endorsement information out. I mean, I don't want to be a hard nose and say, this is your endorsement. Read what you're supposed to be doing.
We're picking up, folks, so I'll mute again. I think we're getting conversations that maybe people don't want to share. Anyways, raise your hand if you want to make a topic. Anyways, I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about our ambassador efforts here. We're just trying to find folks who will be, certainly proponents for this, for moving it forward. I think it was mentioned before by Mindy within the group. There's a discussion section in there. We have a Slack channel for Vermont Open. You can join that. We've got some folks that are making some other efforts around this, the open education piece. In fact, somebody on the call here today, Erica Zimmer, maybe I'll let her speak for a minute on this, is creating an online course right now for OER, how to do it, kind of talking about some of the ways you can use resources, et cetera, like that. As Mindy indicated, there's various things that they're kind of changing up and moving along that we may be able to take advantage of as well. Yesterday, when we were talking with the content folks, there was a piece about thinking about a hub at some point. A hub is something that costs money. We may decide at some point that that's a direction we want to go with this project. But I think for the main thing that we're moving forward for the next 6 to 12 months is just trying to really build awareness across the state in what open education resources are, how they can be created, and trying to bring people to this kind of community we've started here. So I don't know, that's kind of our take right now. So maybe Erica, I'll put you on the spot. Maybe do you want to say something about your course you're creating? You're actually self-muted, so. Anyways, does anyone have any questions? Do the raise hand thing, and I'll unmute you if you have a question or something for what you just heard, or maybe you will have an idea about a direction to take the next webinar. If we do this again with Mindy, what would be something you'd want to go a little more in depth in? How about helping me out with that one? Go ahead, Greg.
Hey there. Has anybody started playing with this or have a best practice on how to use this with one-to-one Chromebooks?
Say the last part again. With what?
One-to-one Chromebooks. What's our best strategy?
I mean, you're just using the web resource, right? I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't
trying to envision how the teacher would use this, and what would be, has anybody played around with this, and what's the best way to push this out to students?
I would say getting some teachers in your school that are kind of familiar with it and seeing what's there for the resources from them, and then using them to kind of be the people who are pushing it out to the students as well.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and of course your library media specialist, I mean, that's a fantastic avenue for this kind of thing, and certainly with students as well, because I think there's a lot of resources here the students could use too. I really like that math resource she showed at the beginning, the house planner one. I know a number of lessons within there. I think those are things that could be pretty the students could do some self teaching or self learning through that, those kinds of resources. So there's some good ones there. Part of it is, we're very much beginning this. You guys are kind of at the cutting edge of this, being on this webinar and for the next, 6 to 12 months or so. So, anything that you kind of can think about or some questions you can bring up or ways that you can work with a teacher to kind of provide, what you think might be best practice would be helpful in the community. Just, put something in the discussion area or something. That'd be great. Anyone else? Directions to take this. Things you want to talk about. Here, Angelica, here you go. Go ahead, talk away.
Oh, yeah. So let's say we were building a collection for our school, something about, again, transferable skill kind of things or whatever. And we wanted to really locate them or zero in on them in addition to the Vermont Open and the tag. So then our tag could be Enosburg High or EFHS. So we could use a tag to kind of zero in to our own school's collection. That's kind of how we would do it, huh?
Yeah, you could. I mean, I would ask that you still tag it with like Vermont Open so that we know that it's a resource from Vermont and that kind of thing. But yeah, sure, you could create your own tag. You saw a couple examples. She showed how many different tags people had kind of used around those. So yeah, that'd be a great way for you to have things that were kind of local too. Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Anyone else? Chime in. Ideas about taking this. What's the next? Here, I'm gonna. Frank, here you go. You're on, Frank.
Yeah, just for an FYI, kind of a few resources that we submitted. Another teacher, myself, that we got. One was a lesson that she had created herself, and another one was one that I had borrowed from another site, which is perfectly fine, by the way. And but we got a message back saying it didn't meet the criteria. So everybody should be aware that if you're submitting new stuff, even if it's stuff that's been curated by somebody else already, but you want to put it into our group, it needs to meet a criteria, and it takes about a day before they get back to you regarding that. If you want, Peter, I don't know if you could share it. I could post the 5 areas of the 5 criteria that they said it needs to meet. It's kind of vague, but I could post it in the questions box, and you could copy it and send it to people or let people see it. I don't know.
Why don't you put it in the discussion area of Vermont Open? That'd be a better spot for it, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, don't put it in the question thing for this webinar.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think, and she talked about that a little bit, how, when they vet things at the OER Commons side, they're mostly looking at whether you were proper in your licensing scheme and that kind of thing. And I think there's, I think we will spend some time. In fact, I think maybe it's a good case for another webinar or a portion of a webinar to talk about that licensing, the Creative Commons licensing piece, because I don't know, I think that's one of the powers of OER is being very specific about the way you share things and the way things can be used and shared and, tweaked and remixed and those kinds of things. So I think it sets a great example for students, who may not understand how easily to share things or I should say that differently, like understanding how easily things to share, but maybe not following proper guidelines or proper copyright schema to do that. So, yeah, so I think we'll spend some more time with Creative Commons licensing. There's also a tutorial. She had showed some of those things in the end, some of the professional development videos and such. There's one it's specific to licensing and how to put things together like that. And also, she went into it only briefly here, but in the authoring tool, when you're done authoring, it then allows you to kind of pick the licensing scheme you want, and it gives some good, recommendations on how you might think about it. So, and yeah, and the licensing piece is kind of a big one. So, anyone else want to contribute to the conversation or bring something up? All right, so I'm gonna give you some homework then. So one of your homework things is to take this information that you learned today and maybe grab a few teachers over the next week or so. Share with them what you saw here. Hopefully, make them a member of Vermont Open. Get them involved. And start, if you have some free time or you have a few minutes and you're sitting somewhere and can do something, go in and look for some resources and kind of see what's out there. Ellen was asking about personalized learning and flexible pathways resources. I think this is a great opportunity for us to put some of the things in that we're seeing at schools in Vermont where people are doing good things in there. So we could contribute to the community a little larger as a whole here. So go out and share with some other folks here. A couple things coming up. I mentioned the course that Erica Zimmer is creating. That'll probably be out. I don't know. We're actually meeting about that tomorrow a little bit. That'll probably be out in November sometime, available. And we're hoping it's something we can kind of set up through Vermont Virtual and allow that it can be kind of self-governed, like a library media person or somebody from a school could take it on and teach some of their colleagues as well doing that course. So there's that coming up. There's going to be a session from one of the content people here, Maggie Carrera-Bly is a fairly new employee here at the Agency of Education. She's really excited about this work, and she's going to do a presentation at Vermont Fest on this. So there's some other things going on here. I've also, there's been, I think Deborah Ella Hansen did something on OER work at Dynamic Landscapes. So there's some other folks in other regions that are doing some work too. So I just encourage you to share. That's what I got for you folks. So unless anybody's got a final comment here, I'm going to shut off the recording.